Summary of What Money Can't Buy, by MichaelJSandel. Let's enjoy the video. Please subscribing to my channel for more great content like this. You'll be notified when I upload new videos. What Money Can't Buy explores the moral and ethical implications of expanding market values into areas of life traditionally governed by non-market norms. The book argues that over the past few decades, market values have crowded out other important values in almost every aspect of life. Sandel presents numerous examples of things that were once outside the market sphere but are now for sale, such as 1. Prison cell upgrades. 2. The right to immigrate. 3. The right to pollute. 4. Access to shorter airport security lines. 5. Surrogate pregnancies. 6. College admissions. Through these examples and more, Sandel illustrates how the logic of buying and selling has increasingly come to govern our lives. He argues that this shift happened with little public debate about whether markets would crowd out non-market values worth caring about. The book doesn't argue that markets are inherently bad, but rather that we need to think carefully about where they belong and where they don't. Sandel contends that some things shouldn't be for sale because putting a price on them degrades them or corrupts their meaning. He presents two main arguments against the expansion of markets. 1. Fairness. In a society where everything is for sale, those with more money can always buy advantages, leading to increased inequality. 2. Corruption. Market values can change the meaning of certain practices, degrading them by treating them as mere commodities. Sandel calls for a public debate on the moral limits of markets. He argues that we need to decide as a society which values should govern various aspects of social and civic life. Key concepts. 1. Market triumphalism, the idea that market mechanisms are the primary means of achieving social good, which has become increasingly prevalent since the 1980s. 2. Commodification, the process of turning something that was previously not considered in market terms into a commodity that can be bought and sold. 3. Moral limits of markets, the concept that there should be boundaries to what can be bought and sold, based on moral and ethical considerations. 4. Fairness objection, the argument that in a society where everything is for sale, inequality is exacerbated as the wealthy can buy advantages in all areas of life. 5. Corruption objection, the idea that putting a price on certain goods or practices can degrade or corrupt their intrinsic value or meaning. 6. Crowding out effect, the phenomenon where introducing market incentives can diminish or eliminate non-market motivations for certain behaviors. 7. Skyboxification, a term Sandel uses to describe the increasing separation between the rich and poor in public life, similar to how skyboxes separate wealthy spectators from ordinary fans at sports events. 8. Civic virtue, the idea that there are certain behaviors and attitudes that are important for the functioning of a healthy democracy, which may be undermined by market values. 9. Public discourse, Sandel's call for a robust public debate about the role of markets in society and where their limits should be drawn. Deep dive to summary. 1. Market triumphalism. In What Money Can't Buy, Michael Sandel introduces us to the idea of market triumphalism, a prevailing ideology that has shaped much of our economic and social thinking since the 1980s. Imagine a world where the free market is seen as the ultimate problem solver, a panacea for all of society's ills. This is the world of market triumphalism. Sandel takes us on a journey through recent history, pointing out how this ideology gained momentum in the era of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. During this time, there was a growing belief that market mechanisms could efficiently allocate resources and solve problems better than government intervention or other forms of social organization. As we walk through the pages of Sandel's book, we see how this belief system spread beyond traditional economic spheres. It began to permeate areas of life that were once governed by non-market norms and values. Education, healthcare, environmental protection, and even personal relationships started to be viewed through the lens of market logic. Sandel paints a vivid picture of how market triumphalism led to the commodification of various aspects of life. He gives us examples that might make us pause and reflect. Imagine being able to buy the right to pollute, or paying for a better prison cell. These scenarios, once unthinkable, became realities under the influence of market triumphalism. The author doesn't portray this shift as a villainous conspiracy, but rather as a gradual, often well-intentioned evolution. Proponents of market triumphalism genuinely believed, and many still do, that applying market principles to more areas of life would lead to greater efficiency and better outcomes for society as a whole. However, as we delve deeper into Sandel's analysis, we start to see the cracks in this worldview. He encourages us to question whether everything in life should be subject to market forces. Are there some things that money shouldn't buy? Does the market always lead to the best outcomes for society? Sandel doesn't provide easy answers, but he does prompt us to think critically about the role of markets in our lives. He suggests that while markets can be powerful tools, they shouldn't be the only tools we use to organize society and solve problems. As we close the book, we're left with a call to action. Sandel urges us to engage in public discourse about the proper limits of market influence in our society. He encourages us to consider not just what is efficient, but what is right and what kind of society we want to live in. This narrative of market triumphalism serves as a backdrop for the rest of Sandel's book, setting the stage for his exploration of the moral limits of markets and the potential consequences of a society where everything is for sale. 2. Commodification. Imagine a world where everything has a price tag. Your time, your body, your relationships, even your moral values, all of these can be bought and sold in the marketplace. This is the world of commodification that Sandel invites us to examine and question. Sandel takes us on a thought-provoking journey, showing how things that were once considered priceless or sacred have increasingly become commodities in our modern society. He paints a vivid picture of this transformation, using real-world examples that might surprise or even shock us. Consider, for instance, the story of a small town in Switzerland that was being considered as a site for a nuclear waste facility. When economists suggested offering money to the residents to accept the facility, something unexpected happened. Support for the project dropped significantly. Why? Sandel explains that by putting a price on civic duty, the offer turned a matter of public concern into a personal trade-off, effectively commodifying the residents' sense of civic responsibility. As we follow Sandel's narrative, we encounter more examples that challenge our assumptions. We learn about parents paying their children to read books, companies selling the right to pollute, and individuals auctioning off space on their bodies for advertising tattoos. Each example serves to illustrate how market thinking has seeped into areas of life once governed by non-market norms. Sandel doesn't just present these cases as curiosities. He prompts us to consider the deeper implications of this trend. What happens to the intrinsic value of things when they're reduced to mere commodities? Does putting a price on everything change our relationship to the world around us? The author guides us to consider how commodification might alter the essential nature of what's being bought and sold. For instance, when we allow people to pay to jump the queue, whether for amusement park rides or organ transplants, are we changing the meaning of fairness in our society? When we put a price on human life in wrongful death lawsuits, are we diminishing the sanctity of life itself? As we progress through the book, we're encouraged to reflect on our own experiences and the world around us. We might start to notice examples of commodification in our daily lives that we hadn't considered before. Perhaps it's the commercialization of public spaces, the monetization of personal data, or the emergence of markets for things like surrogacy or carbon offsets. Sandel doesn't necessarily argue that all forms of commodification are inherently wrong. Instead, he invites us to engage in a thoughtful discussion about where we, as a society, should draw the line. He challenges us to consider whether there are some things that money simply shouldn't buy, not because of practical concerns, but because of moral and civic ones. The narrative of commodification in Sandel's book serves as a mirror, reflecting our society's values back at us. It prompts us to question whether the expansion of market values into all spheres of life aligns with the kind of society we want to create and live in. By the end of this exploration, we're left with a deeper understanding of commodification and its potential impacts. More importantly, we're equipped with the tools to critically examine this trend in our own lives and communities, and to engage in the important conversation about the role of markets in our society. 3. Moral limits of markets. Imagine you're walking through a bustling marketplace. At first glance, it seems like any other market, goods and services being exchanged for money. But as you look closer, you notice something unsettling. Here, you can buy and sell things you never thought could have a price tag: a child's good behavior, the right to pollute the environment, or even someone's place in a refugee queue. This is the world Sandel asks us to examine critically. He invites us to question, just because we can put a price on something, should we? Sandel takes us on a journey through various scenarios where markets have expanded into traditionally non-market areas of life. He introduces us to a daycare center that started fining parents for late pickups, only to find that late pickups increased. We meet people who sell advertising space on their bodies, and we learn about markets for surrogacy and selling organs. As we navigate these examples, Sandel encourages us to consider two main objections to the expansion of markets: fairness and corruption. The fairness argument is straightforward. In a world where everything is for sale, those with more money have more access to everything, from education to healthcare to political influence. Sandel asks us to consider whether this is the kind of society we want to live in. Is it fair that the wealthy can buy their way to the front of every line? The corruption argument is more nuanced. Here, Sandel suggests that putting a price on certain goods or practices can change their nature or diminish their value. He uses the example of friendship. If you could buy friends, would they really be friends? Or consider how paying children to read books might change their relationship with learning. These examples illustrate how market values can corrupt or degrade the meaning of certain social practices. As we delve deeper into these ideas, Sandel doesn't provide easy answers. Instead, he prompts us to engage in a broader societal discussion about where we should draw the line. He argues that these are not just economic questions, but moral and political ones that require public debate. Sandel paints a picture of a society that has drifted into a market-dominated worldview without much public discussion. He challenges us to step back and consciously decide, what values do we want to govern our society? Are there some things that money simply shouldn't buy? Through this narrative, Sandel isn't arguing for the complete elimination of markets. Rather, he's calling for a more nuanced understanding of their role and limits. He's asking us to consider the non-market values like civic virtue, social equality, and the sanctity of certain human relationships that might be worth preserving. As we close the book, we're left with a profound question. In a world where market values are increasingly dominant, how do we preserve the moral and civic goods that markets don't honor and money can't buy? This exploration of the moral limits of markets serves as both a critique of our current market-driven society and a call to action. Sandel challenges us to engage in the difficult but crucial task of defining where markets belong in our social lives, and where they don't. 4. Fairness objection. Imagine a world where everything is for sale. In this world, you can buy your way to the front of any line, purchase better grades for your children, or even secure a spot in a prestigious university if you have enough money. This is the world Sandel asks us to consider when he introduces the fairness objection. Sandel takes us on a journey through various real-world scenarios that illustrate this concept. We visit amusement parks where visitors can pay extra to skip long queues, airports where travelers can buy their way through security faster, and public schools where students are paid for good grades. At first glance, these might seem like efficient solutions to common problems. But Sandel encourages us to look deeper. As we explore these examples, we start to see a pattern emerging. In each case, those with more financial resources gain advantages that others can't access. Sandel asks us to consider, is this fair? More importantly, what does this do to our society as a whole? He paints a vivid picture of a skyboxification of American life, a term he coined to describe the increasing separation between the rich and the poor. Just as skyboxes in sports stadiums separate wealthy spectators from ordinary fans, market-driven solutions often create two-tiered systems in various aspects of life. Those who can pay get a better experience, while those who can't are left behind. Sandel doesn't just present these scenarios as isolated incidents. He weaves them together to show a broader trend, one where money increasingly determines access to essential goods and services. He asks us to consider the implications. What happens to equality of opportunity when the wealthy can buy better education, healthcare, and even justice? Through this narrative, Sandel isn't arguing against markets altogether. Instead, he's encouraging us to think critically about where markets belong and where they don't. He suggests that there are some goods like education, health, and civic life that should be distributed according to principles other than ability to pay. The fairness objection, as Sandel presents it, is not just about individual transactions being unfair. It's about the cumulative effect of these market mechanisms on our society. He argues that as more aspects of life become commodified, we risk moving from having a market economy to being a market society, one where everything is for sale and money is the primary arbiter of opportunity and access. As we follow Sandel's reasoning, we're prompted to ask ourselves some challenging questions. What kind of society do we want to live in? Is it one where money can buy anything and everything? Or should there be limits to what money can buy, especially when it comes to essential goods and services? Sandel doesn't provide easy answers, but he does give us a framework for thinking about these issues. He encourages us to consider fairness not just in terms of individual transactions, but in terms of broader societal impacts. He challenges us to think about what we lose as a society when we allow market principles to govern all aspects of life. By the end of this exploration, we're left with a deeper understanding of the fairness objection and its implications. We're equipped to engage in the important conversation about where the limits of markets should be drawn in our society, and how we can preserve fairness and equality of opportunity in a world increasingly dominated by market values. 5. Corruption objection and the crowding out effect. Imagine you're walking through a park and you see a group of children playing. Some are picking up litter, clearly engaged in a community cleanup effort. You smile, appreciating their civic spirit. But then you notice something odd: an adult is handing out money to the children for each piece of trash they collect. How does this change your perception of the scene? This scenario illustrates the heart of Sandel's corruption objection. He argues that introducing market values into certain domains can fundamentally alter or corrupt the nature of the goods or practices involved. Sandel takes us on a journey through various real-world examples to illustrate this point. We visit a daycare center in Israel that decided to fine parents for late pickups. Surprisingly, late pickups increased. Why? Sandel explains that the fine changed the nature of the transaction. What was once a moral obligation, picking up your child on time out of respect for the teachers, became a service that could be bought. We then encounter the story of a small Swiss town considering hosting a nuclear waste site. When economists suggested offering money to residents to accept the facility, support for the project dropped significantly. Sandel uses this to show how introducing market incentives can sometimes backfire by changing the nature of civic duty into a mere financial transaction. As we delve deeper, we start to see how the corruption objection links to another key concept, the crowding out effect. This effect occurs when market incentives displace or crowd out non-market norms and motivations. Sandel paints a picture of how this plays out in various scenarios. We see blood donation systems in different countries, noting how paid systems often result in lower quality blood and fewer donations overall compared to volunteer systems. We explore how paying students for good grades might crowd out their intrinsic motivation to learn. Through these examples, Sandel encourages us to think about the non-market values that give meaning to various aspects of our lives, things like civic duty, social responsibility, and intrinsic motivation. He argues that when we introduce market mechanisms into these areas, we risk crowding out these important values. The narrative Sandel weaves isn't just about individual choices or isolated incidents. He's asking us to consider the cumulative effect on society when market thinking permeates all aspects of life. What happens to our sense of community when everything becomes a transaction? How does it affect our civic virtues when every good deed has a price tag? As we follow Sandel's reasoning, we're prompted to reflect on our own experiences. Perhaps we've seen instances where introducing money into a situation changed its nature entirely. Or maybe we've noticed how certain intrinsic motivations in ourselves or others have been displaced by external rewards. Sandel doesn't argue that markets are always corrupting or that they always crowd out non-market norms. Instead, he's calling for a more nuanced understanding of where markets belong and where they don't. He's asking us to consider carefully the potential unintended consequences of extending market logic into traditionally non-market domains. By the end of this exploration, we're left with a deeper appreciation of the complex interplay between market and non-market values in our lives. We're equipped with a framework to critically examine the role of markets in our society and to engage in the important conversation about where their limits should be drawn. Sandel's discussion of the corruption objection and the crowding out effect serves as a powerful reminder that not everything should have a price, and that some of the most valuable things in life are those that money can't buy. 6. Skyboxification, civic virtue, and public discourse. Imagine you're at a baseball game. Years ago, everyone sat in the same type of seats, sharing the experience regardless of their economic status. Now, you notice luxurious skyboxes high above the field, where wealthy patrons enjoy the game in isolated comfort. This is the starting point for Sandel's concept of skyboxification. Sandel uses this vivid image to illustrate a broader trend in society. Just as skyboxes separate the wealthy from other fans at sporting events, he argues that market forces are creating similar divisions in many areas of public life. We follow Sandel as he shows us how this plays out in education, healthcare, politics, and even the justice system. We visit public schools where parents can pay for their children to have smaller classes or better resources. We see how the wealthy can buy their way to faster security lines at airports or premium lanes on highways. Through these examples, Sandel paints a picture of a society increasingly divided between those who can afford to buy their way out of common experiences and those who cannot. This skyboxification, Sandel argues, erodes something fundamental to democratic society: civic virtue. As we delve into this concept, Sandel takes us on a journey through history and philosophy, exploring the idea that a healthy democracy requires citizens who can engage with one another across social and economic lines. We learn about the ancient Greek concept of citizenship, where participation in public life was seen as a duty and an honor. We explore how early American thinkers like Thomas Jefferson emphasized the importance of civic engagement for a functioning democracy. Sandel argues that as market values penetrate more aspects of life, opportunities for people from different walks of life to meet and interact as equals diminish. He shows us how this can lead to a decrease in empathy, mutual understanding, and a sense of shared fate among citizens. But Sandel doesn't leave us in despair. He introduces the concept of public discourse as a potential remedy. He envisions a society where citizens actively engage in debates about the values that should govern their collective life. We're invited to imagine town halls, community meetings, and public forums where people come together to discuss important issues. Sandel argues that through this kind of engagement, we can begin to rebuild the civic bonds that market society has eroded. He takes us through examples of successful public discourse, from New England town meetings to national debates about controversial issues. We see how, when given the opportunity, people can engage thoughtfully with complex moral and political questions. Sandel doesn't present public discourse as a magic solution, but rather as a necessary step towards addressing the challenges posed by market dominance. He argues that by actively discussing where markets belong and where they don't, we can start to reclaim some of the civic spaces that have been lost to skyboxification. As we follow Sandel's narrative, we're encouraged to reflect on our own experiences. Have we noticed increased separation between economic classes in our communities? How often do we engage in meaningful discussions about societal values with people from different backgrounds? Sandel's exploration of these concepts serves as both a critique and a call to action. He challenges us to resist the trend of skyboxification, to cultivate civic virtue in ourselves and our communities, and to actively participate in public discourse about the kind of society we want to create. By the end of this journey, we're left with a deeper understanding of the challenges facing modern democratic societies, but also with hope. Sandel reminds us that while markets are powerful tools, they shouldn't determine all aspects of our lives. Through active civic engagement and public discourse, we have the power to shape a society that reflects our collective values, not just market forces.